All sports, all plays. Yeah. All sports, all plays. All sports, all plays. 365, we making up plays. You talking the game, get you to the days. We're high in the court, the dime in the lane. Variety topics living the same. All presentation, sports information. In the airways, taking the nation. All sport, all plays, they working your faces. Grace at the field, so tie the laces. All sports, all plays. Yeah.
All right. What is up, everyone? Welcome into another episode of the Hoosier Huddle. And we actually were lucky because now we have a third member of the panel. We got Amon coming in. Amon, tell a little bit about yourself to everyone as far as, obviously I know you're a Patriots fan. I feel really outnumbered here because I'm the only Cowboys fan. So, I feel like we had the past of the 90s of the original dynasty, and now we have the new school dynasty. So I feel outnumbered. But Amon, introduce yourself. Say whatever you want to say, my man.
Yeah, I'm Aman Patel. I'm 18 years old from North Carolina. Been trying to do this my entire life and want to make a career out of it. Excited to be here, and as you mentioned, a Patriots fan. Been one since day one, so I'm excited to be here.
So I'm already going to let you know, Amon. Freddie is a huge Giants fan. He's also a closet Packers fan. Freddie will never come out and say it, but he is. He's a closet Packers fan because the Giants have been terrible. And they've never been able to catch up. And then, of course, we got Old Faithful. We got Joe, another freaking Patriots fan. Again, I'm so damn
Oh, that's right. I am, aren't I? I feel bad. Amon is 18. I've literally been a Patriots fan longer than Amon's been alive. So
Do you feel the age like creeping up? Like, do you feel your like joints just hurting every time every time you hear that?
I'm actually in a wheelchair every time I have to watch a game because I just can't move. So it's a condition.
Gotcha. Okay. Gotcha. Alrighty. So obviously we got to get into last night's Thursday night football game, which was actually really good. I think Fox kind of closed it out because that's the end of their 4-year run. 4-year run with Fox running the Thursday night football. It was Chiefs versus Chargers. The Chiefs actually ended up winning. But I will say throughout the entire game, you never really knew who was going to get the upper hand and the advantage. Amon, I'm going to start with you. What is your take from the Chiefs versus Chargers game?
I think the Chiefs, they still have a lot of work to do. I think you come out of this game and you still see their offense up and down. And I think that's been the questions. When their offense is going to start picking up? We knew they were missing Chris Jones, and their defense has really picked it up. The big question was going to be, can their offense handle that Chargers big play dynamic stuff that they have with Justin Herbert? And again, they had really good moments and they had bad moments. You saw the 4th and 1 from Patrick Mahomes, threw it straight into the dirt. And so for me, I'm still waiting for the Chiefs to hit that gear. The promising signs there, though. They do come out this game. Some questionable calls from Brandon Staley to not kick some field goals and go for on a 4th down. But again, that Chiefs offense is up and down, up and down. When are we going to find the consistency from them?
Okay. Joe, what about you? What do you take from this?
I mean, really, this game was a discussion about the analytics of football and the future of football, because everybody's like, well, earlier in the season, Staley went for it on 4th down and they got some wins because of it, which is great. And that's fantastic. But not every team is the Chiefs. You have to take points when you can get them. And I think there are times where going forward on 4th down makes sense. I'm not sure with Austin Eckler in the background and the Chiefs defensive line playing a little bit better and the defense playing better, that all those were necessary. I think of the 4 4th downs that they attempted, maybe if you kick field goals at 2 of them. But I think there's another reason to this. The Chargers special teams is bad. It's been bad for a few years. They give up long kick returns. They give up punt returns. They give up, block punts, things of this sort. So maybe part of it was that they didn't, even though they would have put those 3 points on the board, Kansas City has good returners, whether it's Hardman back there or whoever, that if they're getting the ball upwards of the 40, 50 or on the other side of the field, that they didn't want to flip the field like that. So I wonder if that was a concern. And I'm not sure that anybody thought of thinking to ask Staley that.
Yeah, I'd agree because I'll be honest. When I was watching the game last night, the Chargers have been one of those teams all year. They've been so up and down. They'll come out and they'll just start dominating a team. I mean, look at what happened a couple weeks ago against Cincinnati. I mean, they were absolutely just dominating Cincinnati, and then the Chargers were like, "Oh, we'll let them come back a little bit," and then it ended up having to become an actual game there for a little bit. I think if you're a Chargers fan, you have a lot of hope for the future. I mean, you have a quarterback that I don't want to say stole in the draft because, I mean, you did draft him 6th overall, but I'll be honest, if you'd have told me that Justin Herbert out of Oregon was going to probably be one of the better quarterbacks taken in the last 2 drafts, I don't necessarily know if I would have believed you right off the bat. But now just seeing statistically his numbers and how the Chargers perform with him, you can definitely see the difference from the old Phillip Rivers Chargers and the new Chargers of now. Like it pretty much seems like they are almost in every single game that they play, with the exception of the Patriots. Y'all just have their number for whatever reason. Y'all have dominated them twice. And then for the Chiefs, to me, the Chargers kind of showed a little bit more of, I don't always want to say the formula to beat the Chiefs, but they definitely showed like we are going to always cause you issues as far as contending for the division. You might have to worry about Denver defensively. If they find a quarterback, you're going to have to worry about Denver offensively. And then we don't really have to worry about Vegas still, but you need to be worried about us at minimum. So yeah, I thought it was actually a really great game. I thought it was, for whatever reason, yeah, Brandon Staley is like, oh, 4th and 1, going for it. Like he kind of reminds me of how Mike McCarthy does it. There's a lot of times I'm just sitting there, I'm like, Mike, what are you doing? Like, Mike, don't do it. Don't do it. And then they get it, and obviously the fan in me is like, yes, they got it. But the other part of me is like, why did you do that? If it doesn't happen, we are so screwed. Like, don't do that.
But did it surprise you that they didn't run like a bootleg with Herbert? Because I think the last couple games he's been able to run a little bit better, even in this game, like run a fake handoff and roll him out, kind of like the old Peyton Manning naked bootlegs.
A little bit, but I think what they're trying to do, well, and I don't know if they're trying to do this or not. This is just me, assuming. I would almost think they're trying to kind of keep that hidden with Justin Herbert. Like, if they are able to go somewhere, if they are able to make that, a potential run, even if they get a wild card spot, you don't really want people to know that your quarterback can be as mobile and can make those type of plays and can make those type of throws. Because you look at it with Deshaun Watson and you look at it with Baker Mayfield, that was kind of their signature thing. Like, they'll roll out and then they make some of these plays, which is great. And it does work most of the time. But we've also seen, too, teams are able to scheme against that. Teams are able to figure that out and learn against it. And honestly, it's a lot of times what hurts a lot of mobile quarterbacks. You look at RG3, even prior to the injury, when he was semi-healthy, he was able to move. RG3 really struggled because people started to realize, oh, he's going to roll out of the pocket. All we got to do is, keep a linebacker on him that's fast and can make the tackle. Same with Baker Mayfield. Same with Colin Kaepernick. We're even kind of starting to see it now with Lamar Jackson. At least Lamar Jackson has now started to learn, if I go through my line, I have to be shifty. I have to be fast. Now, Herbert, I don't think has that type of speed or that, juke ability, but I do think with how some of the moves that they were using with him yesterday, like the touchdown run that he got, I think if they keep those kind of in reserve for, when they really need it, I think they can be successful with it. But I'll say this too, as much as I like coaches that are aggressive, you have to kind of look at the history of what happens with aggressive coaches. Look at Dan Campbell so far this year. Dan Campbell has been aggressive like every single game, which, again, I like Dan Campbell. I like the attitude, but again, it burns you. And really, the Chargers are lucky that the game wasn't worse off than what it was, because if the Chiefs could have capitalized on it like the Chiefs of old, this would have been a completely different game when they make those types of mistakes. So to me, it was a little bit of both teams had kind of their big errors that they need to fix, but I would say both teams are definitely going to be favorites as far as next year goes going into the playoffs.
Yeah, and I think for the Chargers as well, you talked about it, being really aggressive. I think it shows the signs of youth that they have. Brandon Staley, a first-time head coach, and you have Justin Herbert. I think situational football is something you learn as you continue to play these big-time games. Like the New England Patriots, everyone talks about situationally, they're one of the best teams that play. I think for the Chargers, Joe was talking about how you're playing the Chiefs. You need points at some point, and at the end of the first half, it's 4th and 1 with 3 seconds left. Kick the field goal, go up by 7, so at least you have that gap between you, have that cushion. And then in the third quarter, once again, you have a chance. They score a field goal, 13-14, and you go for it again on 4th and 1. Just sometimes you got to take the points and live with it and be okay and play situational football. Understand, I'm playing the Chiefs. I need points, and the time will come to be aggressive.
Yeah. And I do think, too, it helps because if I remember right, I think the Chargers will actually have the number 1 cap availability next year with like over $75 million in cap availability. So they'll be able to get a lot of free agent help because their offensive line was solid. Getting Rashawn Slaughter was solid. Same with Corey Linsley, the center from the Packers. That was a solid move for them. I think if they can get a right tackle, because Ryan Bulaga is kind of in and out. I think he's kind of past his prime.
Yeah.
I think if they get a right tackle and if they can get a solid defensive tackle in the draft as well to kind of help Joey Bosa as far as the interior goes, I think this Chargers team is going to be extremely scary.
Yeah, like last night, again, what Amon said was absolutely right, and you talked about it too, Tony. I felt like last night that Staley was in a boxing match, and he was passing on those jabs to put damage to the Chiefs and was waiting for the knockout punch. He was always like, no, I don't want to, just jab him in the face. I want to knock him out. And it's like, okay, but you can't win every fight like that. You have to be, when you're playing some of those teams you played earlier in the season and did it, that's fine. Not against the Chiefs, because talk about that overtime touchdown. Like, the Chiefs looked exactly how the Chiefs have looked over the past 3 years on that drive. And Kelsey just playing, I don't know what he's playing at a different level whenever there's 6 defenders and he's just able to move. I mean, that I'm not a huge Kelsey guy, but that was the closest I had seen him to playing like vintage Gronk. Like a guy that just looks like he's running in slow motion, yet gets away from everybody. And that's exactly what he did on that overtime touchdown.
Yeah, I'd agree. All right, so we're going to move into this weekend's game. So unfortunately, 3 of the games, and it's funny because they had 2 games scheduled for this Saturday, both of which have been moved. No, sorry, the Colts and Patriots game is the only one that wasn't moved. But the Washington and Eagles game was moved, and then so was the Seahawks and Rams, and the Raiders and the Browns were also moved. So for you guys, and I'm going to start with Joe, out of this weekend's matchup, what 2 games kind of stand out to you the most as far as what you think would be interesting or what you think would be probably the most game-changing as far as landscape goes for whatever team would win or lose?
I mean, the easy one obviously is New England and Indianapolis. It's the only game Saturday. It's 8:15. It's going to be on the eyes of a nation will be on the game because we're all going to want to see what happens. Damian Harris for the Patriots is out. Both teams coming off a bye. Jonathan Taylor, the rushing leader right now, to some people a dark horse MVP candidate. I'm not as sold because Derrick Henry ran for 2,000 yards last year and got 4th place with no first place vote. So sorry if Taylor's doing incredible things, but let's slow that down just a little bit. But that game's intriguing for all the reasons because now we just see Kansas City on a 7-game win streak. They're 10-4. If New England wants to keep the number 1 seed or stay competitive in that, they need to win. There's a lot of teams. So that game is interesting for that. Indianapolis moved from the 9th seed to the 6th seed just by being on a bye. So we know how volatile the AFC playoff picture looks. The other game to me that's interesting is Cincinnati at Denver, because I think when these teams have played at their peaks, they've been in games or beaten teams that they should be able to beat in the playoffs. Denver's defense is playing really well despite Von Miller. The cornerback, which Patrick Surtain Jr. is, if not for Micah Parsons having the season he has, is clearly the best defensive rookie in this draft. Teddy Bridgewater in and out of the lineup of that offense. They're running the ball really, really well. A 2-headed rushing attack. Cincinnati is one of those teams that has looked like the best team in the league at times, and other times has just looked like the Bengals that we all know and love. But to me, these are 2 teams that are still in the playoff hunt. So this game goes a long way into securing what they're going to be able to do down the line. Because again, we talked about it. 1 loss in the AFC, you could go from a 3 or 4 seed all the way down to a 7 seed. 2 weeks ago, Buffalo was in line to be one of the top 2 seeds. Now they're the 7th seed. So I mean, that game to me is really important. Those are my 2.
Okay. What about you, Amon?
I think, Patriots Colts was one of them I was looking at, but I was thinking about the Buccaneers and the Saints. Tom Brady's 0-3 in the regular season against the Saints, and the Saints, for some reason, just have had this Tampa Bay Buccaneers offense's number. And we talk about how volatile the AFC is. NFC, while not be as volatile, it's still very up in the air for who's going to get that number 1 spot. The Green Bay is up there right now, and for Tampa, you don't want to go on the road like you did last year and have to play every playoff game apart from the Washington game on the road and try to go that route because stadiums are fuller. Communication is harder. So if you can go get a win and keep churning it out, it feels like every game's a must win when you're out there in the NFC. But again, the Saints defense has just, for whatever reason, has had Tom Brady and this Buccaneers team's number in the regular season, apart from the 1 postseason game. And then the other game is more just for me. I don't think there's any big playoff picture to come out of it. It's the Vikings versus the Bears. Justin Fields coming off maybe a pretty solid game against Green Bay Packers last week. It was disappointing what happened in that third quarter. I thought the Bears just kind of sold there, but I think if you're the Bears, you want to see Justin Fields continue to stack good weeks on top of each other. He's coming back home since the first time since he had his injury. You want to see him again continue to stack those good weeks on top of each other against the Minnesota Vikings team that has had their moments where they look really darn good and has their moments where they look like a team led by Kirk Cousins. So I think that those two games for me, one before the Saints Buccaneers, I think that game has a big playoff seating. And then the Bears Vikings, I'm just a Justin Fields guy. I want to see him continue to play well, and young quarterbacks are always fun to watch.
Okay. Yeah, I kind of agree. I think the Colts and Patriots are probably my big one. Obviously, that has the biggest implications because I think, if we look at some of the teams that the Colts have faced, they've given everybody a run for their money. They gave the Rams a run for their money. They gave the Seahawks, the Buccaneers with Tom Brady. They've given everybody they face a competitive game. The two that I'm probably most interested in, and one I would probably change, is the Packers versus the Ravens. And I only say that because we don't know if Lamar is going to play or not. If Lamar does play, what's his health going to be like? What percentage is he going to be at? Because if Lamar is at any type, I would say at least 80%, this is going to be one heck of a game as far as making a determination if Green Bay could even keep the number 1 seed. If they do, it'll kind of help the Ravens as far as securing themselves in the AFC goes. And then my second game is going to be kind of odd because it's kind of a garbage game. But as a Cowboys fan, I'm super ecstatic to watch it. And that's the Washington versus Eagles game. And I say that for a couple reasons. A, if Philly wins and Dallas wins, Dallas wins the division this week. On the other hand, though, I think Philly is probably one of the teams I think is going to actually come in as the 7th seed for the wild card. A lot of people actually have the Vikings doing it. If I remember the seedings right now, it's Green Bay, Tampa Bay, Arizona, Dallas, the Rams, the 49ers, and the Vikings, all per the standings right now. And in all honesty, I think I could very easily see the Eagles and Vikings making a switch. This game coming up against the Bears, it's on Monday night. Kirk Cousins never does well in the spotlight. The Bears have seemed to have the Vikings number here of lately, kind of the same thing. I'm a huge Justin Fields fan, and second, the Bears were my second team growing up that I like to watch. So go Bears. And again, kind of the same thing with the Chargers. The Vikings have been one of these teams when we've seen them click, they shut out the Steelers, which isn't much to say because they almost blew it against the Steelers, but they shut out the Steelers essentially for 90% of the game. It's a team that you can see has potential, but when you have a defense that's absolutely abysmal and you have a defensive coach like Mike Zimmer, and Mike Zimmer was so good for so many years and made this Vikings team relevant again, it's surprising to kind of see where they're at. And I think after this year, I think I could very easily see Mike Zimmer going as well as Kirk Cousins. But I think the Eagles, all honesty, will win this game, and I think it's the most interesting because they run the ball extremely well. I don't know. I don't want to say that there's a little bit of controversy at quarterback there with Gardner Minshew, but I mean I feel like Gardner Minshew didn't really get a solid chance from Jacksonville. He was solid statistically. He puts up great numbers. He made the Jags competitive in every single game that he played in. And I mean, albeit they beat the Jets, he looked fantastic against the Jets. And Washington, literally like 23 of their players all have COVID and are going to be out for this game. So I don't see Washington even remotely sniffing the playoffs anymore at this point. But those are my two. And then kind of sticking with the NFC. So obviously we saw in the draft, San Francisco kind of shocked a lot of people when they drafted Trey Lance at number 3 overall. A lot of people thought it might have been Justin Fields with kind of the schematic that Kyle Shanahan likes to play. I think it almost would have been better for them to get Fields. I think the way that Kyle Shanahan would probably run his offense would be really similar to what Justin was probably familiar with at Ohio State. And then there was a lot of talk of him potentially. For me, I know you guys are Patriots fans, but the Patriots to me is probably the best spot for Mac Jones because it's so similar to what he ran at Alabama. Like to me, I think that's why he's had such a growth and such a, easy transition into the NFL is because Bill Belichick is willing to run that same system that Nick Saban ran, because it's a copycat system, and I think that's why he fits so well. For me, if I was San Francisco, I think I would still make that pick again for Trey Lance, and I say that because we've seen Jimmy G kind of take a step forward as their quarterback, but Jimmy G has an injury history. Jimmy G has proven if he can stay healthy, yes, he can take you to a Super Bowl. But there's a reason why they don't trust Jimmy G really throwing the ball a whole lot. I'm not saying you have to be a super heavy passing team, because we've seen that not really work throughout the league. But I think with the potential that you have with Trey Lance, the raw talent that everybody was looking at and they see in him, I think you can't really miss or pass up on a potential quarterback like Trey Lance, especially now that, at least coming up in this collegiate draft, coming into the next draft, is there a college quarterback name that really stands out, like a Trevor Lawrence, like a Justin Fields, that you're like, yeah, that guy, a little bit of work can potentially run my franchise. Joe, I'll start with you. What do you think? Do you think San Francisco would do the same thing and draft Trey Lance, or do you think they'd get somebody else?
I don't think they should draft Trey Lance. I mean, really what they're doing is they went from 12 to 3. They gave up 2 future first-round picks. So even if your college scouts tell you, okay, we don't see a quarterback in the next 2 years right now that is going to be worthy of a top 5 pick, okay, that's fine. But if your goal is the Shanahans, because they're the ones who run that, it's not John Lynch, it's the Shanahans. So if you're them, what you want is you're building a team to win now. You were in the Super Bowl. You have a chance to move up into the top 5 and get a pick. The problem is like you said, Trey Lance, if he's healthy, ideally they hope that he grows and runs into that Shanahan system. The difference is you have Justin Fields, who is more ready, who has the physical attributes to do that. So if you still make that trade, which I personally think is a bad trade, you do a pick swap from 3 to 12, and you give up 2 future firsts. You have Trent Williams, who's the highest paid left tackle, or one of the highest paid left tackles in football, who's very old. You have an offense. I mean, he didn't know Deebo Samuel was going to be this guy. But again, the more wear and tear you put on him, the more injured he is. So again, you have Fred Warner. You have all these guys in place. And then you go out and you get a project. I mean, all the stuff about Lance was like, oh, this guy is as smart as a whip when it gets, put him on the board. He can dissect all the plays and all that stuff. Well, that's fine. But you need to correlate it out to the field. And he had 14 total starts, like in his collegiate career, if that. Like, the guy just hasn't played enough football. And if you're a Super Bowl caliber roster, drafting Trey Lance and giving up 2 future firsts for it, to me, is malpractice. I'm actually surprised that they're not getting more of this. This is a team with all the injuries are still in the playoff hunt. And when's the last time you heard about Trey Lance? Seriously, when's the last time, if you don't live, or if you're not a 49ers fan, that you thought about Trey Lance? That's a problem with the number 3 pick in the draft.
Well, I mean, is it? Because really, if you think about it, if you look at kind of the Bears situation, or you look at New England's situation, you look at all these situations where you had, a veteran quarterback is gone, or you have a journeyman veteran quarterback that you're bringing in, and you draft a rookie to potentially be the future of your franchise, right? If you look at, look at Justin Fields, for example. Justin Fields has been kind of thrown to the fire. If you look at him statistically, Justin Fields doesn't look like he's, a great pick. And kind of the same even with Trevor Lawrence. He's in Jacksonville. That's a dumpster fire, but we'll get into that next. You kind of want your starting quarterback like Jimmy G to be healthy. Because for me, I'm a big proprietor of, I like the idea of rookies being able to kind of sit back, learn the game. He has come in a couple times, not a lot, not enough to really make a splash onto the scene. But, let him kind of sit there and learn, let him kind of see how the game goes. Because for me, if we look at some of these quarterbacks that are taken, or, have these big prosperous expectations, the first name that comes to my head always is Blaine Gabbert. Like, Blaine Gabbert was supposed to be like one of the best quarterbacks out of that draft, coming out of Missouri. He goes to Jacksonville, and Jacksonville says, sink or swim. Feeds him to the wolves, and the dude, completely sank, unfortunately. Now, as he's been a journeyman, he's learned, and he's actually become pretty decent backup. So for me, I don't know if I would completely cast out Trey yet, personally.
It's not a complete cast out. I just think, again,
Mhm.
if this was a situation like Jacksonville or Philadelphia or some of these teams that are trying to rebuild from the bottom, I think the
Mhm.
Trey Lance pick is a little bit more defensible. But if you have a roster that even is playoff caliber worthy, I just don't like the Lance pick. Sorry.
Now, do you think if they say they stayed at 12, do you think, given the other team's needs at quarterback at that time, do you think another team goes ahead and drafts him before the 49ers do?
I mean, 50-50. We didn't expect the Bears to come up and get Fields. So, I mean, that's a team. There was reports of the Saints trying to come up for the Patriots and getting like Justin Fields or possibly Mac Jones or somebody. So, I mean, is there a chance? Sure. But it just, again, to me, I think, again, those packages that they ran for Trey Lance, Justin Fields looks just as good at them. And if Jimmy
Mhm.
G misses a couple games, I think Fields is more prepared in that run style. I mean, Dustin in the comments wrote, Jimmy G can get you to Super Bowl. A great running game and a defense will. Well, guess what? The Bears wish they had right now. A great
Mhm.
defense and a running game for Justin Fields. So if he's in San Francisco, maybe that makes the difference between them being competitive in the NFC West and now being a fringe playoff team.
Yeah. Amon, what do you think?
I was coming out of the draft. I thought Justin Fields was the best quarterback to come out. I had a Trevor Lawrence. I had a Zach Wilson. I thought he was the best guy to come out of the draft. So if I was the Niners, I would have made that trade, and I would have happily had Justin Fields at 3. Now, again, we can't cast off Trey Lance because we haven't seen enough of him. But to Joe's point, you're a team that's ready to win now, and Justin Fields, you know more about him. You've seen him play more games, and all the reports coming out, he's more ready to win now. Now, Mac Jones was the more pro-ready quarterback, but you didn't want another Jimmy Garoppolo and Mac Jones. You wanted someone who could make all the throws down the field, had the big arm, could use the run game, use the play action. And that's what Justin Fields did at Ohio State, and I thought he would have fit seamlessly into the 49ers. Again, I thought he was the best quarterback coming out of the draft, and I thought it was a no-brainer to take him at 3. I just think people got little blindsided by the Trey Lance. They saw the arm. They saw the running of Trey Lance at North Dakota State. And again, everyone talked about him on the chalkboard and how he could whip it all up. But again, to Joe's point, you're ready to win now. Get a quarterback who, if Jimmy G misses time, which let's face it, he probably will. It's been his history. Every season has an injury, out for a couple games. Justin Fields could win you some games now with a good running game, with a good defense. He's shown that he can be competitive in Chicago when the defense hasn't been very good since Khalil Mack went down. The running game has been on and off, and the receivers aren't really there. We saw the block Allen Robinson threw for him, or the block he didn't throw for him against the Green Bay Packers. So if you put him in that Niners environment, I just think that that's just a better fit. It's right there. And I think you're in that conversation right now as a team that's competing in the NFC West and maybe in the lead in the NFC West.
Okay. So speaking of franchises, as far as getting a franchise, well, generational talent, so we think, in quarterback, also just recently fired their head coach in Jacksonville.
Oh, really?
Now that they've gotten rid of Urban Meyer, now that they have their what they think is their franchise quarterback, what direction do you think Jacksonville goes now as a franchise? Amon, I'll start with you.
I think you go Jim Caldwell. Everyone who's ever played for Jim Caldwell has loved Jim Caldwell. You hear all the former Lions players vouch for him, and he had 2 playoff berths with the Lions. I get it. You had Matthew Stafford and Megatron, but you still had 2 playoff berths in a division with Aaron Rodgers, with the Lions. And I just think they need a culture in there that's a positive, upbeat culture that has won in the past and that brings winning. And I just think that Jim Caldwell can be that guy for a young quarterback. He, again, everyone loves him. And I think for a team who's gone through one of the worst years that you can put a football team through all the scandals, through the losses, I think to give them some of that upbeat morality that Jim Caldwell brings to teams, I just think that makes so much sense. And again, it's not like he can't win. He's won in the NFL with the Lions, who went 0-16, who have this bad history. And if you give him a generational talent, which Matt Stafford was, and we think Trevor Lawrence can be, I think you can get somewhere and at least compete in games and build up a culture there in Jackson.
Okay. What about you, Joe?
That's a great one. I've heard Jim Caldwell's name get brought up. Another one that really makes a lot of sense is Raheem Morris. Has a lot of respect around the league. Has taken over his interim at the Jets. Took over his interim at the the Falcons last year, I believe, was up for some head coaching spots and didn't get him. I think he'd be a great addition. What I'd like to see is I'd like to see them go a defensive, steady-handed coach and a nice, young, innovative offensive coordinator. If Byron Leftwich would be willing to leave Tampa Bay, bring him in. Try and make Eric Bieniemy the highest-paid coordinator. Get him out of Kansas City. Bring some of that offense. I think the thing that a lot of people do is guys like Bieniemy, who are hot commodities in the take world, Eric Bieniemy needs to be a head coach. Well, maybe he's not ready. Maybe he's not. But if you can get him out of that Kansas City system and show people, hey, I'm not under the umbrella of Andy Reid. I'm not under the umbrella of Patrick Mahomes. If Leftwich gives, I'm not under, Bruce Arians. I'm not under Tom Brady. And they go to another team and they bring some of that offense and say, hey, I can do this different places. Then maybe it's a 1-year stopgap. But again, Caldwell's a great choice. Again, I like Raheem Morris. There's some, Dustin wrote, Byron Leftwich. There's a lot of talk because he's a son of the Jacksonville Jaguars, took him to the playoffs and things of that sort. Again, I think there's a lot of good things, but something we talked about before the show started, the Meyer thing is a whole other situation.
Oh, I think all of us have had connectivity issues, and I think Joe has some right now.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I think Joe's frozen at the moment. Anyway, Dustin also wrote that Jim Harbaugh to the Jags would be fun, but they need a guy like Bill Cowher or Steve Mariucci. I think with Jim. Okay, Joe's back. Joe, we lost you for a little bit. You were frozen.
Sorry. Sorry. I'll finish up real quick. But what I was saying is, again, I think it's just something that the organization, and we talked about beforehand, the Meyer stuff aside, you brought in Trent Baalke because he was a GM that was around the league. Is he your GM going forward, or was he the GM because you hired Urban Meyer? I think that there needs to be a total 360-degree look at the Jacksonville organization from the owner, Shad Khan. I think they need to bring in smart football people. And if you think Trent Baalke's that guy, fine. But if you have to rehire a new GM because, the number 1 overall pick was easy. It's Trevor Lawrence. Now makes the hard part. Now it's building a team. You're going to have a ton in free agency of money. We talked about who's the team you mentioned earlier, Tony? Oh, the Chargers having a bunch of money. Jacksonville's going to have a bunch of money. You need to know somebody who's going to build a team smartly. Is that Trent Baalke or is it somebody else?
Yeah, and I'd agree. And I was just getting ready to say, Dustin talked about Jim Harbaugh coming to the Jags. I think with Jim, I think part of why he was so successful, and whether people want to admit this or not, when Mike Singletary was the coach of the 49ers, he built that team. Like, he put all the pieces there. Like they were there, they were ready to be competitive. Like, you had Alex Smith there for, about 6 years. Like, they were, he was not a bad quarterback. You have this pretty good defense. You have a good wide receiving core. You had probably one of the better tight ends in the league in Vernon Davis. And then Jim Harbaugh comes in. And, for Jim, it's like, all right, now I just have to make it all work and I have to just put it all together. And then, Jim continued that success with it. So for me, I think that if Jim went to the Jags, that's kind of the issue, is because the Jags basically went from, the team we remember that goes to the AFC Championship in 2017 to they just blew everything up. They got rid of one of their top quarterbacks in Jalen Ramsey. They got rid of A.J. Boye. They got rid of Calais Campbell. They got rid of, Blake Bortles. They don't have Allen Robinson. They don't have Allen Hurns. They got rid of everybody that was any type of a building block foundation. Mm-hmm. Now, if you're a head coach coming in, what do you have? You have Trevor Lawrence. You have his basically number 1 receiver in DJ Chark. You have an aging Marvin Jones, which I still think was solid. I think, unfortunately, he fell off just because it's Jacksonville and they don't really know how to use him. You have Josh Allen on the defensive side, and then you have Miles Jack there as well. And really, to me, that's it as far as any type of a building block foundation that the Jags would have. I kind of agree. I like the idea of some of these coordinators kind of coming out and doing something different. That's why, honestly, and to kind of bring it to college football a little bit, that's why I liked Lincoln Riley leaving Oklahoma and going to USC. Because if you think about how Lincoln Riley inherited Oklahoma, it was because it was Bob Stoops. Bob Stoops ran that program for almost 20 years. A lot of those guys were Bob Stoops guys. and he was able to continue the success with it. Kind of the same with Joe's team because he's an Ohio State fan. Urban Meyer built Ohio State. He had a lot of those guys. You bring in Ryan Day. All right, a lot of these guys are still Urban's guys. So, how well will they do? So for me, when these guys kind of break off and go do something different, I think it will help them because for me, I would want to see Eric Bieniemy go and get a head coaching job. I really do. I just don't want him to be one of those like you look at some of the coaching positions that become available. Like look at, a couple years ago, some of the coaching jobs. You had the Giants, you had the Cowboys, you had Washington, you had help me out of my huh?
Indy.
Was Indy a couple years ago? Because Frank Reich's been about 2 or 3 years. Well, actually like 3 or 4 years.
After the 2017, so 2018 he got there. So.
Yeah. So to me, if I'm a head coach, so we'll take, for example, we'll take the 3 NFC East teams, right? So when Dallas's head coaching job is open, Washington's and the Giants. If I was a coordinator and it's like, man, I'm really looking for my place to go be a head coach to see where it'll work. All right, if I go to Dallas, I have the money, I have the fame, I have a lot of talented players, but I have an owner that's always going to be in my business, and I'm not going to have an entirely complete and total say over my staff, what I do, my players, everything like that. But again, you're going to be in the spotlight. You're going to have a lot of potential. You're going to have a lot of talent as long as you win. Washington, you don't really have an offense, but you have a star-studded defense to work with. Like you have a ton of first-round players at the defensive side of the ball. It's going to be a transition. You're probably going to have a lot of control. Washington would probably be up there with probably the first best job that you could get, and then probably the second to third would be the Giants. Again, young defense you can work with. Offense, you got Saquon Barkley, and you have Sir Turnover himself in Daniel Jones. So to me, it's like if I'm Eric Bieniemy, I wouldn't want the head coaching job in Jacksonville because while maybe, yes, you take a chance and you turn the franchise around, but then what if you don't? Because then, okay, you were a great coordinator, but you suck as a coach. And then it's, 10, 15 years before you get another head coaching job again. Case in point, Pat Shurmur. Pat Shurmur was garbage I think he was head coach of the Browns at one point. Garbage for the Browns. Goes and becomes a coordinator, becomes the Vikings coordinator, and then the Giants are like, Pat Shurmur's the guy, and he was garbage once again. So it's like I don't want to see good coordinators end up being wasted in that way. So that's why I agree, bring in Byron Leftwich as your offensive coordinator, bring in Eric Bieniemy, let them kind of prove that, yes, we are the guys. And then while you do that, you may end up having other coaches that come up on the hot seat, Look at Chicago. Chicago, you'd have a better place as far as being able to build yourself, having young raw talent to be able to work with, having stars on multiple sides of the ball. San Francisco, because there's been a lot of talk, how long are they going to continue the Kyle Shanahan experiment? Because we've seen when he loses his starting quarterback, it's game over. He's done. So how long are they going to continue to do that? So that to me is my big thing is what can they do to not completely hurt themselves and ruin their head coaching chance and be able to actually make their name going. But that's just me.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So speaking of, who do you guys have as far as your top 3 in any particular order as your guys' coach of the year candidates? Joe, start with you.
Mine are real easy. It's going to sound like homerism, but it's not. So I won't start off with him. Number 1's Matt LaFleur. The Rodgers situation coming into the season easily could have exploded. They've had a lot of injuries. I think LaFleur is showing that the faith that the Packers organization put in him to lead this team has been rewarded. Again, I don't think he's the best coach, but right now they're 10-3. They're the top team in the league. They're the number 1 seed in the NFC, which at this point is the most top-heavy conference. So I think LaFleur just gets it by default. Number 2 is Bill Belichick. I don't think much needs to be said about that. Rookie head coach. I'm sorry, not rookie quarterback, all those. Yeah, not a rookie head coach, rookie quarterback,
Hey,
all
Bill,
those things like
Bill's
that.
doing solid as a rookie head coach, my guy. Solid as a rookie.
He was a late bloomer.
Right, right.
No, again, Bill Belichick, easy. Third is Mike Vrabel. Derrick Henry, you could argue one of the 3 best offensive players in football that's a non-quarterback. Some could even say even with quarterbacks out. The Julio Jones experiment has not worked well. That defense is playing better than they were earlier in the season. They're still 9-4. Like, for all the doom and gloom coming out of Tennessee, they're 9-4 and 1 game back in the number 1 seed. So I think Vrabel has to get a lot of consideration. I saw somebody posted Kingsbury in there. I get Kingsbury. He's probably my 4th, but his coaching at the end of the last game just goes to show why he can't be coach of the year. Call him the most surprising coach of the year? Sure. Best coach of the year? Not quite.
Okay. What about you, Amon?
Well, with the Cliff Kingsbury thing, he was one of the 3 that I had listed. A lot of the times the coach of the year goes to the most surprising. I have never heard of this guy, but he kind of wins it. We talk about Matt Nagy. He wins it with Mitch Trubisky. Wow, I didn't expect him to really do what he did with Mitch Trubisky and get that Bears team there. And that's just kind of how it goes sometimes. I agree with the Matt LaFleur thing. He's 33-7 as a head coach, and I get Aaron Rodgers is there, but he's kind of reinvented this Packers team. They drafted A.J. Dillon. They got a lot of heat for drafting A.J. Dillon, but they got power in the backfield with him and Aaron Jones. They built up that offensive line. The defense is playing good football, and they're winning. At the first place in the NFC, you can't argue with results. And then, again, the homerism of Bill Belichick. You lose Tom Brady a year out. People are all digging his grave. Everyone said, oh, well, he can't coach. He got carried by Brady. And I'm sure he heard a lot of that. We saw Tom Brady post at the end of the Super Bowl run that clip of all the people who talk crap about him. I'm sure Bill Belichick has the whole B-roll ready for himself as well. And as soon as he got Mac Jones, he's built his team. We're going to run the football. We're going to play defense. And when a lot of people thought Buffalo's going to take away this division, they're going to be the next big thing out the AFC East, lo and behold, Bill Belichick and the New England Patriots are sitting there. I still think Matt LaFleur is probably number 1, but I put Bill Belichick and then Cliff Kingsbury at 3.
Okay. So I'm going to be honest. I am probably one of the biggest Packers haters out there, and that is going to continue to stay true throughout this topic. I don't look. I am a huge proprietor of kind of the same thing with coordinators. A lot of times, your quarterback can make you or break you. How do we really gauge you as far as being a head coach? How do we really gauge you as far as being an offensive coordinator or a defensive coordinator? All depending on the players that you have. Matt LaFleur inherits probably one of the most successful, statistically, because I'm not going to give Freddie the satisfaction of it. Statistically, one of the most successful franchises as far as consistently winning, consistently being competitive, almost always winning the NFC North in the Green Bay Packers for the last 30 years, because they struck gold getting a dude that was drafted by Atlanta, trading for him, and come to find out, kind of the, hallmark standard for the new generation of quarterbacks to go out and beat his records, everything like that, and Brett Favre. Then you draft a dude in 2005, you have him sit for 3 years, lo and behold, Aaron freaking Rodgers is, the next great quarterback in Green Bay. I do see y'all's point with Matt LaFleur, handling Aaron Rodgers in the Green Bay situation in the way that they did. I really want to see how Matt LaFleur does without Aaron, because it's kind of the same thing with at least Bill Belichick, who I would consider for coach of the year. Bill has been there for so long, and we've seen the success that he's been able to have because of Tom Brady. But a lot of that was also because Tom Brady was the one guy that said, hey, just trust in the system, trust the process. It's not going to be fun. It is going to suck, but you know what we're going to have at the end of the year? We're going to have a Super Bowl ring, or we're going to at least be competing for one. So what are you really going to be upset about? Bill has been there for so long. He can get the players he wants. He can draft the system that he wants. So to me, I would say Bill purely because of that, and I don't necessarily define Bill off of Tom Brady. I define Matt LaFleur off of Aaron Rodgers. And I say that because, again, even though they've spent a ton of money on the defense last couple of years, that defense to me is still suspect. That is not a defense I will ever trust. And again, I say that because every time. They started out hot a couple years ago with them. They were like 13-3, and then defensively they fell apart. Kind of the same with last year. They were good, they were decent, and then literally the difference between Aaron Rodgers running for it or not could have been whether or not we saw Green Bay and Kansas City in the Super Bowl instead of Tampa Bay and Kansas City. I do kind of agree with what Dustin said with Cliff Kingsbury, and I say that because even without Kyler, without AJ, without DeAndre, he's been able to find ways to win. He took a team that really, if you looked at the NFC West, who were probably going to be your two top teams, you would probably pick out of that. You were probably going to say the Rams and maybe alternate between the 49ers and Seahawks, or maybe you have both. But the Cardinals, to me, at least initially coming out of it, to me, the Cardinals were going to be kind of at the bottom of that picking as far as who would come out of the NFC West. Nobody expected them to be as good as they've been. So to me, that says a lot that he's been able to turn a team around now in his third year, a pretty decent way. He's got his quarterback that works, and they've been able to put, build around him. And then I would also say Brandon Staley, even though Brandon Staley's one of those, as soon as he learns, like, you don't always have to go for it. You don't always have to be aggressive, and you have a good quarterback. I think Brandon Staley will work. Because, I've, again, being a Dallas fan, I watch it every flipping Sunday with Mike McCarthy. I need that man to play Madden for like 5 minutes and learn what a timeout is and learn clock management through Madden. That's all I need. But yeah, if I had to pick, I would say Bill probably first, Cliff second, and then Brandon Staley third. Again, I'm not sold on Matt LaFleur until he either goes to another team, coaches, and has success, or if he's able to win without Aaron Rodgers. And I'm not saying win like a game with Jordan Love. I mean, go out, have like an 11-6 season. Go win 11 games. If you can do that, come back, talk to me. Okay, Matt, I can put you in consideration for, great coach. And I know Freddie's going to be a little bit salty at that, but I don't care because Freddie is a Packers fan, whether he wants to admit it or not. All right, gents, we got a few minutes left. Anything else you guys want to address, or any other topics you guys want to throw out there and talk about before we cut loose?
Yeah, the international stage for the NFL just got a lot bigger. I don't know if you guys saw, but the NFL have been working on partnerships with franchises around the league. Obviously, there's big markets everywhere from Europe to Asia to Canada, Mexico, South America, things of that sort. So if you get a chance, I don't have the teams right now. I think it was like 26 teams were announced. The Patriots got part of Germany. There's like 3 or 4 teams that are really big in Germany. Basically, what this does too is it sets up for more international games. They really want to play a game in Germany. So look for that in the next 2 to 3 years of at least the Patriots going to Germany. We always talk about Jacksonville going to London because the Cons own a stadium. Well, now you're going to see the Patriots go there. One of the things that was really interesting is I saw somebody post it. The Rams got into China and also Australia. I think they were the only team that actually got 2 different countries. Again, I could be wrong on that, but again, the international appeal of American football, we know football as in soccer is huge, but for American football with everything online and being able to see it, the NFL is really investing internationally and matching with the teams to try and get apparel, sales, games, things of that sort. I mean, we already talked about the Super Bowl being the most watched event in the world, for one event. The Olympics is different. Like for one event, it's the Super Bowl, even everywhere around the world. So I thought some of those matchups were kind of interesting.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think they're almost gonna. Do you think that you could see them trying to bring back the NFL Europa like what they had, years ago?
I actually think that's a better investment than some of the leagues in America. I would actually be interested to see them have like satellite sites in like maybe 4 or 6 European cities and taking the players from America and sending them over there and basically turning them into kind of quasi colleges and just having like, this is your facility. You're going to live here. Kind of like internships. You're going to work here. You're going to live here. You're going to do everything here for 6 months out of the year, training camp, games, all this stuff, and have it affiliated with the NFL. I actually think that's the best thing they could do if they want to try and have a secondary league.
Yeah, I'd agree, and I'll be honest, that's kind of what I hoped the XFL would become. Because to me, I think the XFL or really any of these football leagues, and I think the XFL would probably be the best, especially with the way that it was rebranded when it came back the second time around. If you can have that second team that second league that can go out and make some type of an impact, and really be competitive, come out when after the Super Bowl, because I mean, when are people going to actually watch football? After the NFL is done. Give these leagues, give these cities a chance to be able to have teams be competitive and have it be like a G League or like a minor league. Have these guys that maybe come out of college. Look at PJ Walker, for example. PJ Walker got a second chance in the NFL because he did great in the XFL. So I think now, again, the big thing is money. But again, if you can kind of put that international footprint, at least with the NFL, I would be willing to bet you could probably have a few international cities be like, yeah, let's do it. Let's have our own football team and, expand this out.
Two teams. Sorry. So no, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Even the USFL coming back too, right? We heard that announcement from Fox. They're sponsoring USFL. So I think there is definitely wants to have that spring football league. And I think the international market would be awesome. You expand the talent pool as well to those, those kids out there in Europe who have seen the game through online and just have watched it, the streaming platforms and everything. The game has become such an international brand. To expand the talent pool and almost have it like, if you in the NBA, they say if you don't make it in the G League or the NBA, you go play in China and then you kind of come back to the NBA, kind of have that kind of system where you go play in Europe for a couple. If you need to go play in Europe, you go play in Europe and then you can come into the NFL. I just think it's a way to expand the talent pool and allow more people to grow and allow the game to get even better.
Yeah, I mean, if you put two teams in Germany, a team in Italy, a team in Spain, a team in France, a team in England, a couple other countries, you could have an 8-team league, 4 on one side, 4 on another, split your conferences instead of, the AFC, NFC, East, West, you could do North, South, however you want to do it. I mean, there's all kinds of ideas. And you talked about money. I mean, something that rich people like to do is invest money. You tell me you can't find a couple hundred millionaires or billionaires in Europe who wouldn't want to sponsor a stadium or sponsor a league in cooperation with the NFL. I mean, one of the most internationally recognizable brands. Like, you see the NFL, even people who don't know the ins and outs of football know what that means when they see that logo. I just think, again, there's a huge market for it.
Yeah, I'd agree. All right, gents. Well, this has been another episode of the Hoosier Huddle. Thank you to Amon for coming on. Hopefully you enjoyed being on. We enjoyed having you. Again, might have to fix the whole Patriots thing. But again, at least you're a Patriots fan before Tom Brady, so I can't be too mad. And, of course, Joe, thank you for always being here, always providing entertainment, and, always putting up with me, giving you crap about being a Patriots fan and whatnot. Because, we're the original Patriots, and then you guys are, the new us because, Dallas had to set the standard somewhere. But, that's just me. But hope y'all have a good night, though. We will hopefully be back. We'll hopefully be back next week. That may or may not change with the holidays and whatnot. But y'all have a good night and peace.
All sports, all plays. Yeah. All sports, all plays. All sports, all plays. 365, we making a plays. You talking the game, get you through the days. Great eye in the court, the dime in the lane. Variety, topics, living the same. All presentation, sports information. In the airways, taking the nation.